Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And today I'd like to show you how I made this card. It feels a little bit to me like a vintage Christmas card. And the stamp sets I used to make this card was this Good Tidings, which has this very large holly leaf on it that's a double two-step stamping, and it's got two-step for everything. There's a separate little holly leaf and berries. There's the larger. There's the berries for the whole large one. There's a couple of stems. There's a to from. The ones I'll be using are the large holly leaf two-step, the one holly cluster, and the one leaf stem, the small holly cluster, and the small leaf. And then I'm using the Good Tidings of Great Joy and the sentiment for the inside, may the gift of peace, love, and happiness be yours this season. I thought that was a lovely little greeting. The other stamp set that I'm using, this is a Hostess set. I love this set. It's called Background Bits, and I'm using this script here from this set. And you can see that that's dotted around different places. All right, so what we're going to need to make this card is I used a base, and I didn't use the red or the cherry cobbler. I used the rose red because I wanted that sort of faded Christmas look. So I'm using 8.5 by 5.5 scored at 4 1/4, a base of rose red. Then I have a piece cut at 2 7/8 by 2 7/8 square. Then I have two pieces of Very Vanilla that measure 5 1/4 by 4. And let's see, I think that's pretty much it. There's incidental things. Oh, and a scrap of Very Vanilla to create our sentiment here. So I am using the largest of the stitched framelets to cut that out once we get that stamped. So let's just go ahead and get started. We'll start by folding and burnishing our card base here. This card was actually a lot of fun to put together. I've been really intrigued by this Good Tidings stamp set for some time, and I just got it in the mail and just was really anxious to start messing around with it. And I've got to tell you, it's an interesting stamp to stamp. I'll bring this up close to the light. I used a highly contrasting color, and so it almost gives an out of focus look. I used Old Olive and I used Garden Green to get the big contrast. You could get a much milder contrast on this stamp by stamping one color of ink, say Old Olive, and stamping off a couple of times to get the background, and then stamping more full strength for the second layer. And I found that using the second set of berries, in my mind, made it look just kind of messy. I think use either one or the other, and I like the one that was more fully completed. But it does give this almost out of focus appearance, and I really have to say I liked it. And then decided that the first prototype that I did, and I'll share that with you, I did in white without the distressed look, and I didn't like it near as well. So in the end, I switched to the Very Vanilla, and the only thing I'm going to change up about the project for today is I'm going to do a little bit more distressing on this. So here we go. I'll move this one out of the way, and we're going to do the majority of our work on one of these white panels. Make sure that's right. Yeah, 4 by. Okay, so I'm going to bring out my Pierce mat, and I've got all of my stamps mounted here, and I'll be using the rose red ink And I'm going to leave that lid open because I'm doing a little bit of a wash there. And I'm using the Old Olive, and I'll be using the Garden Green. And I'm going to set all of these here, make sure you can see everything that I'm doing. And my stamp sets, this one is the first stamp set that is the more solid leaf. And I'm going to need lots of scratch paper here. So I'm going to put one on my pierce mat here. And then I'm going to put another one down here on the side. So my Old Olive, you can see it is very juicy. It's just been re-inked. So I'm going to stamp off once, and then I'm going to stamp a set of these leaves right down here on the bottom in the corner. There we go. All right. Now, it's a little startling when you first stamp this down. And I'll say that one of the things that you have to remember is the ink gets a little bit lighter as it dries. So here we go with the second image, which I'm going to put, let's see, right in here. And it's okay with me if the leaves overlap, but I'm going to let this one run off the side of the page to get the look that I want. Okay, so I'm going to ink this up one more time, stamp off, and I'm going to put one more image right up here along the top of the card. Okay. I just love the way this stamp set looks. And like I said, I practiced a lot separately to make sure that I got this one right, because it's a little daunting. There's a lot of detail, particularly on this stamp set, and learning to get it lined up. And I'm going to give you the tricks that I learned in lining this up. So I'm going to put this in the Garden Green. And I'm going to go full strength with the Garden Green. And the thing I'm going to line up, I'm going to turn this around, because what I'm going to line up are these little spots here. These little round circles here, and this leaf. And I'm going to line that up with these little circles here and this leaf right down here. And so hopefully I'll do that successfully. If you take your time on this, it really isn't that hard to line up. So the first thing is getting the little circles kind of lined up, and then turning your stamp to get this leaf lined up. And as soon as I've got both of those right where I want them, then to come down and stamp, and it's pretty close. And the thing is, the little bit that it's off isn't much. So I'm going to do the Garden Green again and line up this next one. Lining up, but it's when you get the top lined up, then you line up the bottom, and it kind of has you working back and forth. Okay, last one. All right, now as that dries, the next thing I'm going to do is the center set of berries. And this is one, let me clean that, stamp it, get it put off to the side here. I have my Stampin' Cleaner just off camera here, and I've learned that even between stampings, if I clean off my stamps right when I'm done with my stamping, and get it ready to go, then any residue that even comes on your blocks comes off, and then you're really ready to go again. All right, these are the berries. And what I'm going to suggest to you that you do is this side here on the card, where there's a little bump out and almost a little bunch of berries all down the side here, and it's here, lines up perfectly with this side that has 4 berries in a row. And that's what I did to line up this stamp. Now, I did stamp off with this because I wanted more of a faded berry look. And let me stamp this one here. And again, I'm lining up here at the top and along this edge. Let me re-say that. I'm lining up here, here, and then trying to avoid this leaf down here at the bottom. So there's really 3 places to line up. And when I've got it really close, I'm going to go over this bottom leaf just a hair, and that's okay. But isn't that pretty? It's kind of a faded rose color. And I'll do one more full strength so you can see what it's like. And it's just a little bit darker. And I found that I really did like it. Although that's very pretty, I did like it a little bit lighter. So I'm just going to stamp off just a hair and line this one up here as well. Okay, so you can see the difference of the darker berries and the lighter ones. And going over it again with the second one seemed kind of redundant to me, so I tried it and I wasn't crazy about it. So that's the berries stamped. Then there's this little stem, and for this I'm using soft suede. So I'm going to put this one away for the moment, the rose red, and put my brown out, my soft suede. And on this one, I have this stamp mounted, and this stem has, I did it in brown, and it has a piece of stem that fits in here, fits along here, here, and then comes out the bottom. And so if you just line it up to get this first one in the top and the second one right in between here, then it comes down just perfectly. And there it is. It gives you a little bit of a stem here, a little bit of stem right in here, here, and down at the bottom. And frankly, this is so busy that if you miss it by a bit, it's not going to show. So I would say just do your best. And there's enough going on with this stamp that it actually looks pretty good almost no matter what you do. So here, one last one to do. All right, there we go. And so that's the stamping that we're going to do. And on this one, I had the stems going down. I just realized I stamped this one with the stems going up. And I don't think that's going to matter. I think it's going to be just fine. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is on our piece of scrap here, using, in fact, I'm going to cut this down. It's just a little bit big for what the room I have here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is ink up this Good Tidings of Great Joy in the brown. And this is a big stamp. I would say I would not try this one without the pierce mat underneath. It definitely needs the support. And when you have a stamp that's this big, I say, you know, err on the side of making sure it's really inked up well, looking at it, making sure again and again. And then when you stamp this down, I want to put it in place so there's plenty of room for me to put my Thinlit around it. And then because it's big and you feel like you're putting pressure, what I found is that you really need to make sure you put pressure individually all over, especially the ends. It's real easy to stamp down and get a faded end of the T or no little loop under the G. So I decided that for this, I was going to stamp down and make sure I got all of the ends and the middle, and that I was going to let it sit on that paper for a bit to go ahead and soak in. And then I got a really nice image out of it. So, and I had to ink it up 2 or 3 times when I first started in order to get it to ink up properly. So then this is what I would do, is place this over here. It fits beautifully inside this stitched framelit. Run that through your Big Shot. In order to save a little bit of time, I've already run mine through. So there's my Good Tidings of Great Joy. In fact, that one is even darker than the one I just stamped, if we just take a look at it. And not by much, but a little. Not by much. But this came out as a really nice image. And I decided that on my piece that fits underneath here, I thought that since I was going to distress an edge, that I might also distress this piece. And so what I did was I used my distress tool, and you've seen me do this before. This is a Ranger distress tool, and just distress the edges. And I've also showed you that you can do the same thing to it with the edge of your scissors if you don't have a distress tool. And so you get exactly the same effect. This was done with the scissors, and this one was done with the distress tool. This is just a little easier because it's built to do that, and I've already done one. So here's my already distressed piece to hold this sentiment. Now, the next thing I want to do is continue my stamping, and I'm going to continue with the brown, and I am going to use this script from the Background Bits stamp set that I showed you earlier. And I'm just going to ink that up, and I'm going to stamp off, and then I'm going to just randomly put this script around here. I just love the way that looks. It does make it look pretty vintagey. All right. Then what I did was I used my aqua painter with a little bit of, I think that's it for the brown for the moment anyway. So I'll put that to the side and bring back my rose red. And what I wanted to do was tear this edge, and what I did was I put a little bit of water in the ink here, and actually quite a bit of water because I wanted a very, very faint image or faint amount of the rose red just along the edge here. And I watched a video. I enjoy Connie Stewart's 2-minute tips videos, and over time she saved me a lot of time and effort. I enjoy watching her videos. Now, I didn't want to use water too much because I didn't want to make the other ink bleed. So I'm going to, boy, have I got ink all over myself here. I'm going to let that soak in for just a second. And then I'm going to kind of pick it up wipe off the, and the reason I did it there was because it makes this easier to rip when I don't have a big edge to rip from. Now you can solve this by cutting this panel a little bit, maybe another 1/8 of an inch bigger so that you have a bigger edge to cut from, but I didn't think that far ahead. So wetting down the edge and then having just a tiny bit of that rose red along that edge appealed to me. So I'm just going to continue to rip this edge. Now I did put a little bit of color right on the edge of where I had torn because I thought that added a little bit. And you want to be really careful that you don't get too much on the green so you start bleeding the colors. But just a little touch of the red along that torn edge I thought added a little something to it. Then to get more of that kind of a distressed look, I did use my dauber with some of that rose red, and I took a lot of the color off of it, just a little bit, and just started putting just a little dab of the rose red, just to give a hint of that rose red color along this part that's going to be exposed on the card. And again, it goes to the aging of the paper. So I'll bring this up so you can see how much I put on. Not a lot, just a little dab so that it's got a hint of that red. All right, then I also did a little of this script stamping just with what was left of ink on the stamp across my main stamp here. And while I was getting this video set up, one of the things that kind of bothered me about this design was here I have all of this aging and I have this distressed look, and then I have this very precise little stitch framelit, except I just love the look of the stitch framelit. And so I thought, well, what would happen if I distress the edges of the stitched framelit? So I'm going to do that here and just get a little distressing there. And then I thought I might use a little of the soft suede ink to just kind of go around the edges of this message. And I think I'm going to like that better. You know, I do change things up sometimes as I go, and I think that's one of the things that's some of the fun parts about doing this, and that is that you can do things on the fly and make things up and do them just a little differently. And it doesn't always have to be exactly the same way. On this one, I'm going to put a little bit of edging on this that is tone on tone with the rose red. Okay, so this one is ready to be put here. Now what I did was I mounted this piece flush on the card, and then I raised this one with dimensionals. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a little bit of snail on this piece and get that down here. You know, I'm going to also take that background bits and put a few words coming off the edge on that side. Okay, now this is ready to go. That way it's not quite so stark on that end. Okay, so there, I put that piece in place with roughly the same margin along the top and down the side. As I'm looking at it, it doesn't look too straight to me. There. And then this piece I did put up on regular size dimensionals, and I put them in the corners and in the middle to make sure it had plenty. I intended to get this video up yesterday because I usually put them up on Wednesdays and Sundays, but I had a surprise out-of-town guest. So my plans for the day got reassembled. Life intervenes that way sometimes. Okay, so let's get this one centered here. Very good. And then I'm going to do that same thing with a little bit of this red, just to add a little bit of that color on the front of that. Isn't that just pretty? I love the way this looks. It looks very, very vintage to me, very kind of old-timey, and I just am loving the way it looks. Okay, so let's bring back in our card base here, and this is ready to get secured on the card base. So I'm going to do that with just a little bit of that. I also used a little bit of this old olive, I think it's called sheer ribbon. It's 1/8 of an inch, and I really like it. It's very easy to work with, and I thought it would be kind of nice to put a little bit of a bow trim off the ends of this and put a glue dot down on, kind of fold it over on itself and put it on the back of the bow. This ribbon is so small, tiny, that you really don't need anything but the one glue dot to kind of hold it in place. There. I think that's great. All right, now on the inside, we have this piece here, and what we have on the inside that I had done from this one is I did the same kind of thing. I used my dauber and my aqua painter here to wet down the side of this. I'm going to wet down the front and the back on this one. And maybe what I'll... No, I think I like it better torn. Okay, so I'm just going to tear this edge. A little bit more water on that. The other thing that Connie did when she did this kind of a thing is she used an aqua painter filled with alcohol. And because the alcohol, and I'm going to try that, because the alcohol dries so much faster, and it makes, both of them make this tearing business a heck of a lot easier, especially if you have kind of a thin edge to cut, and I do, because I just cut these the standard size. I'm going to watch I don't get any ink on the inside of my card here. So I'm just going to continue to tear this edge along here. Okay. All right, there we go. Now I'm going to add a little bit of that color right along that edge like I did on the front. Just a very faint amount, but it's nice because it gets absorbed into those torn spots. And then I'm going to set that aside and again go with, as I did here, with my dauber on just the inside of the card, just along the edges here, putting some just a little bit of color here. And then I used my soft suede and my script stamp to add a little bit of this script along the very top and along the bottom. And then I have the other pieces of that stamp set that include the small holly leaves and the berries. And so I have those stamps mounted here, and I'm going to give those a little scrub before I get started to make sure that they're cleaned and ready to go. And so here's my one that's more solid. So I'm going to go in with my old olive. I'm going to stamp off once, and I'm going to put an image here at the top, and I'm going to put an image at the bottom. Okay, so then I'm going to take the detail part of the stamp, which has the more detail piece. This is really easy to line up. This one, the one we stamped first, you'll notice it has two leaves that almost look like a wing. This almost looks like a butterfly. And so it's real easy to line up the two of them over the top of one another because both of them have that sort of arched look away from one another. So this one just gets lined up over the top and down once. And see, it almost gives that out of focus look. I just love it. Let's see. So this one got put in this way. So there we go. Got a little darker relief on that one on the top, so maybe I'll do this again. There we go. And then I have my little 3 holly berries here, and there's a little circle here and a little circle next to it. So it's real easy to line that one up right against those circles, and I did stamp off and put that in. Doesn't that look pretty? It's just a very vintage kind of look. So there we have it, and then we have one more stamp, which is our sentiment, and this I also did in soft suede, and I set that right here on this upper right hand corner. May the gift of peace, love, and happiness be yours this season. And I'm going to try and get that on here nice and straight. Press down all the way across. Don't rock. Let it sit for a second, and then straight up. And there we have it. And I think that's just very pretty for the inside. So now I'm going to add this to the inside with a little bit of snail. As this dries, that ink will lighten up a little bit. But there we have it. I have a lot of stuff to put away here. Our pretty little project for the day today, which is this distressed looking old-time Christmas card with this beautiful holly stamp on it. I'm going to have to mess with that some more. Like I said, it took a little bit of practice, and that's what I would suggest. doing this on scrap paper first and getting the colors the way you want them. I tried it with Pear Pizzazz and Old Olive. I tried the Old Olive on the bottom and then this Garden Green. There are lots of variations that you could do to get different looks. This one is more of a stark look, and the color contrast is very deep, but there's ways to do this where the color contrast is very minor and it's just a lot softer. So there's lots of things you can do with this stamp set, and I think it's gorgeous. In fact, I think I'm going to do another one where I fussy cut one of the leaves out and make it a little bit more 3D. I think that would be very, very pretty on this card as well. Anyway, so that's the project for today. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll give it a try. You can purchase everything that you see here on my website, which is www.lbettinger.stampinup.net. And if you don't already have a demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator, or you could join my team. All of the details plus my phone number are listed below, and you can call me or you can put an inquiry on my website, and happy to answer questions and happy to do what I can to help you. Don't forget to subscribe and share the video. And let's see, the prize draw. We've got a few days left on the prize draw for this one. It is the Merry Little Labels bundle. So it is the Merry Little Labels stamp set and the punch. And if you put in an order of any amount, you go into the drawing, and to receive a gift at the end of the month and a reusable card from me, an order of $25 or more. So thanks again for stopping by. I really do appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to you again soon with more projects and more cards. Bye.